For most of his life, Barron Trump has been the quietest figure in a family built on noise. While his father, Donald Trump, seemed to live for the cameras, for the headlines, for the constant churn of media cycles that either praised or condemned him, Barron took the opposite approach. He didn't court attention, he didn't give interviews, he rarely even appeared in casual photographs unless it was at a family event he couldn't avoid. The public knew him by a handful of traits: his exceptional height, his striking resemblance to both parents in different lights, and the way he seemed to glide through the chaos of the Trump political machine without leaving a personal footprint. In many ways, his silence became his identity, and it worked. In a family where every other member's dating history, career, and even fashion choices were dissected, Barron remained untouchable. The phantom Trump existing mostly in the background. That carefully maintained anonymity began to crack after he left his elite Manhattan private school and stepped into the sprawling, unpredictable ecosystem of New York University. It was a shift no one could entirely prepare for. Suddenly he was moving through a city without the controlled bubble of the White House or the discrete boundaries of a private school community. College life was looser, messier, full of social events and overlapping circles. People noticed him. Students whispered when he passed, and slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the gossip mill began to hum with a new kind of speculation. Barron Trump, it seemed, was dating someone. At first, the rumors were wisps of smoke without fire. Someone claimed to have seen him walking with a girl near Washington Square Park. Another swore they spotted him at a coffee shop with someone who was definitely not a classmate. Anonymous posts on student forums talked about a very tall guy and a pretty brunette seen slipping into a downtown restaurant. No photos, no confirmation, just the kind of chatter that dies as easily as it starts. But then, late in May, News Nation threw gasoline on the embers. In a short but loaded report, they cited a source who described Barron as having a very nice girlfriend, someone he saw regularly and clearly cared about. The source mentioned that she was low profile, preferred to stay out of the spotlight, and shared Barron's instinct for privacy, a personality trait he was said to have inherited from Melania. The report didn't name her, but it didn't need to. Once the press catches the scent, the hunt is inevitable. In the days that followed, the guessing game took over certain corners of the media. Who was she? Was she from his NYU classes? An old acquaintance from his private school years? Someone entirely removed from politics and society? It didn't take long for one name to start rising above the others: Mari Arana. She wasn't famous in the Hollywood sense, but she wasn't unknown either. In conservative online spaces, she was an emerging presence, a young influencer with an immaculate Instagram feed, a curated public image, and a growing audience. She had the kind of profile that blended political commentary with lifestyle content, the sort of calculated visibility that appealed to a certain type of ambitious young conservative. Like Barron, she was enrolled at NYU. Unlike Barron, she leaned into being seen. The Daily Mail had already mentioned her months earlier, painting her as someone who could fit the mold of the perfect girlfriend for Barron Trump. And in April, she'd given an interview to Variety in which she laughed off the idea of dating him, but admitted she wouldn't be opposed, adding the claim that they'd never actually met. Whether that statement was true or simply a way to keep the story at bay remains a matter of interpretation. What is clear is that sometime after those comments, their social circles began to overlap. According to people familiar with their movements, the two were introduced at a small NYU-affiliated event, the kind that mixes students with select alumni and invited guests. It wasn't a date, just a polite introduction, but it sparked enough curiosity that they began seeing each other again in other settings. Political mixers, charity functions, and gatherings where the lines between networking and socializing blur. What happened next was an exercise in stealth. They weren't spotted holding hands on a crowded street or sitting in the front row of a Knicks game. Instead, they kept to quiet spaces, an out-of-the-way cafe in Soho, the more private stretches of Central Park, restaurants that offered secluded tables or private rooms. Friends who saw them together said they were relaxed in each other's company, politically aligned, and clearly comfortable with the fact that their names would inevitably be linked at some point. But for months, they avoided giving the public any proof. No selfies, no tagged photos, no breadcrumb trail on social media. In the age of constant oversharing, their ability to stay under the radar was almost impressive, but even the most careful choreography can falter, and by spring, small cracks began to show. At a charity event in New York, Barron was photographed, not with Marie, but close enough to her in a group shot that online sleuths pounced. The framing, the timing, the people present, all of it fit too neatly with the rumors. Suddenly, Marie's follower count jumped. Gossip accounts began weaving theories out of coincidence. And though she never posted anything confirming the relationship, subtle details in her content, a location tag, a fleeting shot of a restaurant interior, were enough to keep the speculation alive. For Barron, whose public persona depended on silence, this was uncharted territory. He had spent his entire life avoiding exactly this kind of dissection, and now it was creeping in at the edges. There was another layer too, one that had nothing to do with NYU or Instagram. The Trump family is its own brand, and dating someone in that orbit comes with unspoken rules and unrelenting scrutiny. Melania had always been protective of Barron's independence, but even she understood that anyone who got close to her son would inevitably be measured against the family's image. Donald, known for his candid and sometimes cutting assessments of people around him, often took an interest in his children's partners, weighing in with casual remarks that carried the weight of judgment. While there's no evidence that either parent disapproved of Mari personally, the mere fact that the relationship had entered the gossip cycle may have been enough to raise concerns. In a family where every move can be turned into a headline, even harmless relationships can start to feel like liabilities. By early summer, the relationship had ended. There was no public fallout, no thinly veiled jabs on social media, no friends rushing to plant dramatic quotes in the tabloids. It ended as quietly as it began. According to people close to them, the split wasn't about a betrayal or a single event. It was about friction that had been building for months. Barron valued an almost impenetrable level of privacy, and Mari, though respectful of that, lived in a professional ecosystem that demanded visibility. For her, being seen was part of the job. For him, being seen was a risk. What had initially been a manageable difference slowly became a constant negotiation, one that left both of them feeling like they were bending too far in opposite directions. It wasn't just about personality. The pace of their lives was mismatched. Barron moved deliberately, choosing his appearances and his company with care. Mari thrived in the momentum of events, networking opportunities, and public engagement. At first, those differences were complementary. His caution grounding her energy, her openness drawing him out of his shell. But over time, they became points of tension. Add to that the Trump factor, the unavoidable reality that dating Barron meant inheriting the weight of his last name, with all the politics, polarization, and media fixation it brings, and the strain became unavoidable. After the breakup, Barron withdrew even further from public view. His presence on campus became sporadic, and when he did appear, it was with a small group of friends who acted as a human buffer. He doubled down on his studies and avoided settings where cameras were likely to appear. Mari, meanwhile, continued to grow her online platform. She didn't address the relationship directly, instead focusing on the same blend of politics, fashion, and lifestyle that had defined her brand before their paths crossed. To her followers, it was business as usual. To those who'd been paying closer attention, the shift back to her pre-Barron routine was its own quiet confirmation. Part of what makes this story so compelling is that it offers a rare, humanizing glimpse into Barron Trump's world. He's been so carefully insulated for so long that even the smallest peek into his personal life feels like a revelation. And because the breakup happened without the usual hallmarks of celebrity romance drama, no public accusations, no messy digital trail, it leaves a vacuum for speculation to fill. Was it really just a lifestyle mismatch? Did outside pressure play a bigger role than either would admit? Or was it simply the natural ending of a first serious relationship when two people realize they want different things from the world? Whatever the exact mix of reasons, this was Barron's first test in balancing personal connection with the public microscope. And while it ended without scandal, it's hard to imagine future relationships escaping the same scrutiny. The combination of youth, fame, and political legacy guarantees that any romantic involvement he has will attract attention, whether he wants it or not. For now, he seems content to let the chatter fade, retreating into the quieter spaces where he's always been most comfortable. But anyone who's watched the arc of public fascination with the Trump family knows this isn't the last time Barron's private life will slip into the spotlight. Because in his world, privacy is never permanent. It's just the pause between stories. And as much as he may try to live outside the glare, there will always be people watching, waiting, and ready to tell the next chapter.